Welcome to the Larry Rinker Golf Podcast, your place for tour-proven conversations, world-class instruction, and real results. I'm your host, Larry Rinker. My guest today was the 2011 National PGA Teacher of the Year. He's also the Worldwide Director of Instruction at the Nicklaus Golf Academies. That would be my friend, Mike Malaska. Mike, welcome back to the show.
Larry, it's good to see you again. I'm glad you're running. Here we go.
Here we are. We're putting the band back together. I'm getting my great guests like yourself. We're doing this again. It's been about 5 years since I've did the Larry Rinker Golf live shows on Facebook. But, it's great to catch up with my old friends. I was thinking about you and your mentor, Jim Flick, and my mentor, Bob Toski, were best friends. They started the Golf Digest schools in the mid-70s. It really created what you and I get to do, where all we do is teach. We don't have to run the operations at the facilities. We really owe a debt of gratitude to these two gentlemen and the great teachers they hired. They got Peter Costas, John Jacobs, Chuck Cook, John Elliott, Davis Love Jr. List kind of goes on with all the great teachers that were at those Golf Digest schools. And, it's so funny to me, Mike. It seems like I'm fighting this battle all the time where so many teachers are talking about how the big muscles control the little muscles. But Jim Flick and Bob Toski taught us how to play this game with our arms, hands, and wrists, didn't they?
You know, it's interesting. Every sport that I've ever played, and when you understand how the body learns patterns, it's called tactile learning. So you learn from fingers and toes and hands inward. This doesn't tell this what to do. And so everything I learned, throw a ball, when you watch how people develop, a kid learns to throw a ball, they learn to do this little pattern first. They don't learn the big muscle movement pattern until they have this one down. Now, what's really interesting, Larry, is relative to Toski and Flick and those guys. I just did an interview that's going to be on my website, about 2 hours worth. Phil Blackmar and I interviewed Jack Nicklaus. And it was interesting. It was magic because there's stuff in this. I mean, you're going to love it. But every time we talk to Jack about, Jack, you're going to hit a shot. And the whole interview was about how do you play golf. It wasn't about whether you cross the line at the top or whether you suck it inside out, but it was about how to play. So every time he'd start talking about a shot, he'd be sitting there in his chair and he's looking at me or he's looking at, and all of a sudden he'd look right at the camera and he'd start moving his hands and his fingers. And then he said, well, the first thing, Mike, is you have to know yourself and what you can do. And he says, and then you have to stand there and look. And he says, you've got to see a shot. And the first thing, you have to feel it in your fingers. So he's doing this. He goes, you feel the shot. And he keeps looking right into the camera. And he's going, you feel it in your fingers. And once you feel it in your fingers and your hands, and they know what they're going to have to do, then your arms and your body pick up what they're going to have to do to accommodate what you're going to have to do with the club face. And I'm just sitting there going, I mean, that ought to be, I'm going to put that lot because the industry now thinks this controls this. And no, this can do a lot of control if this knows what the heck it's doing. The people that we work with over our careers of teaching, this part, they have no idea. They just kind of place their hands on a club some way. And then they start moving, trying to figure out what do they have to compensate? What do they have to do to try to hit it occasionally? So backing up your question, you got Toski, who's all about writing and fingers and hands. You got Flick, who talked about hands and your hands control the face. And then you got Nicklaus, who was a pretty good player, talking about how he programs himself to hit a shot. And he get right in the camera, and it's like this. He didn't say, I take this and I move it. No, he's just doing this.
Yeah.
And so I think the industry, I know the industry, well intended that they are, have gone down a rabbit hole that very seldom does it help most of the people they're working with.
Right. Yeah, and I had a lady the last 2 days that I asked her what sports she's played, and she really hasn't played a whole lot of sports. And she was in good shape, but I just told her, I said, look, she was a runner. And I just said, you got to give yourself a break. You've never trained your hand-eye coordination playing any other sport like your husband has. And I said, you just got to give yourself a break. And I told her, I said, you got to start understanding what you're trying to do with your hands, and your hands control the club face. And she liked that a lot. And I asked her, I said, has anybody ever told you what you need to do with your hands when you play this game? She said, no. And I hear that story way too often.
Every single person that comes to me for a lesson, one of the first things I have them do is take a ball and throw it. Now I got a lot of people, not just a little. I can get something out of it, but no, I have them throw it far enough where they kind of throw, and I watch them. Now I've had guys, women, juniors that show up that have never thrown. So the
Right,
first thing I do with them, because learning how to use this lever system and create this is your biggest one of your biggest speed producers you have in your golf swing. So if they can't do that, and I even had guys say, "Well, yeah, I used to play baseball. We'll throw," and and they've got this. They don't have any of this.
right,
So what the first thing I teach them is, okay, take the ball, put it in your hand. I hold their elbow and I go, okay, now hold them here. And I say, okay, all we're going to do is go here. Just let the ball go back and then I'll let it go. Boom, boom. And then I go here. Boom, boom. And if they've got that, then I go here. If they
right.
kind of get that, then I go here. Because that combination of this lever and then this one and then this arm and then how this moves to accommodate it, that's the deal.
Well, it really is. And when you throw a pitch, it's overhand. When you shoot a free throw, it's kind of overhand still. But golf, the way the arm sets, it's on an incline plane, isn't it? It's on an angle. So now you got to learn how to do that on the plane of
Yeah,
the golf swing.
yeah, you've got to learn to take this to here
Right,
to here.
right, right.
But the
And it's
lever,
interesting how there's more hand and wrist in putting and short shots around the green than most people think. And we see time and time again that they're trying to take the hands and wrist out of putting. They're trying to take the hands and wrist out of chipping and pitching. I marvel at the commentators. They see Jason Day. He's hitting these pitch shots with a ton of big muscles, very little hands and wrist. He's using some, but they marvel and say, oh, that is so great. But I think to myself, how many guys on tour do it like that? Not many. And to me, the greatest ever with the sand wedge in his hand was Seve Ballesteros. He didn't look anything like that.
well, Phil Mickelson, Seve
Well, yeah,
Vallis,
that's right. There's another one.
you
I
start
mean,
running down, the short game. I mean, again, I go back that thing with Jack. Like I say, I'm going to probably do a screenshot of that because when he went like this, you're going, okay, that's a pretty good visual of the game relative to the best player who's ever played it. And in short game and putting and chipping, if your hands are on correctly and you start to move the momentum of the club, the joints are going to stabilize and keep the face doing what it's supposed to do. When people get in trouble is when they start, doing crazy things where all of
right,
a sudden their instinct for hit or throw, this instinct here and then this instinct, those two instincts disappear. And that's this is hit and this is throw. Everything you've ever hit, you hit like this. You don't hit it like that.
right.
And
And
so
that's
instinct,
because of the plane.
yeah, instinct for hit is this, and instinct for throw is that. Now, if you put those two together, which is how I learned to play initially, it's how Jack plays, it's how Tom Watson plays, it's how Lee Trevino played, it's how Byron Nelson played. Now, it's not how Hogan played.
Right.
So that's the other thing is when you start looking at how we're going to teach people to play, looking at the human body and understanding how it learns patterns and applying those patterns the way the joints are designed to do them seems to me to make some sense.
Well,
When
it does. And I see all these people. Hogan's golf swing has been studied so much through, I mean, I've been playing golf for over 60 years now. There's so much that has been studied, but I remember when I met Bob Tosky in 1976 and worked with him all through the years, he said early on, very few people can do what Ben Hogan can do. And he has a funny story where he said he was trying to make his swing flatter and trying to do some of the things Hogan does it or did in his swing. And Sam Snead caught him out of the corner of his eye doing it. And he said, Mouse, what are you doing? He's like, well, I'm trying to swing like Ben. And he says, well, you're hitting it all over the range. Let me see that Bob Tosky swing. You get those hands high and hit it with your swing. And he starts hitting it well again. He goes, you go swing like Bob Tosky. Quit trying to swing like Ben Hogan. But I don't think people really understand that very few people are low core and can swing the golf club like Ben Hogan did.
no, and Hogan had some things. For instance, his left thumb, he was hypermobile. So he could take his left thumb when I flatten my left wrist like this, I take my hand and I take my thumb, he could lay it on his wrist.
Oh my goodness.
So when he got to the top of his swing and he started down, all of that lag that he had, all of this, it's like you or I taking our thumb off the club. And then you stand there, all of a sudden you go, oh, well, I can do that. Well, see, me trying to do what Hogan did with a certain method, I tore the tendons in this thumb trying to get more and more angle because I don't have the mobility. I mean, even if I twist my wrist, if I break my wrist down, I can't lay my thumb down. And Hogan could lay his thumb on his wrist. A lot of people don't know that. So he
Wow.
was mobile. So he would do things in his swing that his hands would allow the club to do things that unless you have that same makeup, you got no chance. And you know, Larry, it's interesting in all of, and nothing against Hogan, because Five Fundamentals, I've read it. There's a lot in it that's really good, but there's a lot in all of it that's good. But I tried to do Hogan and I tried hard to get, I had a group that lived on the Hogan pictures. And I got pretty good at it until I tore the tendon of my thumb. But the reality is, I started looking on tour when I started playing out there. I said, how many people out here look like Ben Hogan? Swing like him. I mean, that you'd say, man, that looks like the Hogan swing. There was only one or two guys. I'm trying to think of his name. Doesn't matter. But virtually nobody could look like him. Now, the
Right.
reason they can't is they can't do what he was doing. And the
Well, and
reality of
it's very hard. Plus, his grip didn't really match how rotated his body was at impact. But you have to
no,
get into the mind of Hogan and understand what he really wanted. He hooked the ball. He wanted to get rid of his hook, so he had a very neutral grip when it should have been strong like Dustin Johnson's. And he wanted to rotate his arms and hands as fast and as hard as he could going through the ball and not have it go left. You have to understand that that's what he was thinking up here. And that's what he really wanted to be able to do. He wanted to eliminate the left side, so he just changed his left hand grip quite a bit so he would never hit it left. And I think a lot of people don't realize he did that.
he changed his left hand grip and he changed where he wanted his right hand to be right here. So then he could move and he could rotate his arms as hard as he possibly could and not hit it left. Okay, the problem with that is that much face rotation, the timing behind that to square the face and keep the ball in the same place. It's why he said at the end of his career, he didn't miss a day where he didn't hit at least 500 balls a day. Now, I know he had a much more elevated anticipation of what he should do,
Right,
but would you try to copy somebody that took a lifetime to get where he was, and then it took him 500 balls a day to maintain it?
right. Now I
Because there was
want Bruce Litsky. I want to go home and the banana's in the bag and I go back on tour and haven't hit a ball since I left. And I can go out and compete. And you and I work with a lot of people that how much do they really practice? We're kind of lucky if they hit balls before they tee off. So they really want just a few simple concepts of what they can do when they go play. So you were an All-American at Weber State. You've competed in a number of PGA Tour and PGA Tour Champions events, along with 3 PGAs and 2 US Opens. How close did you come to making it as a player?
Well, I came really close. However, having said that, at the time that I came close in 86, when I played Shinnecock, I played really well at Shinnecock, made the cut, actually was in the mix going into the seventh or eighth hole on Saturday. Um, that was kind of the peak of my career relative to playing. But I had 2 herniated discs in my back, one in my neck, and that year I ended up going to the finals of the tour school, and for about the sixth or seventh time made it to the finals, got to the last day and missed by 1 or 2 shots. And I finally just said, that's enough. I mean, there wasn't enough money in it then. And if you weren't a star, there wasn't, and that's when I focused my attention. I mean, I was good. I mean, it takes a lot to be able to get to that level, but I still didn't feel like I was playing golf. I was still playing swing. And
Right.
I got pretty good at it. And I ran into Pete Agoscu, who helped me physically, and he showed me a couple of things. And I basically, the year at Shinnecock, because I started with a fairly strong left hand, because I came out of baseball. And so I started there, and the face worked this way, and I hit it and went like that. And I was really good. And then the method I got into, and the teachers that I went to my second year of college, they go, oh, your grip's too strong and your hands are working wrong. You got to weaken your grip, get the face, hold the angle, rotate your forearms. Well, I spent the rest of my professional career doing that. And then Agoscu, who's a physiologist, kinesiologist, he started asking me about grip. And he goes, I don't understand why you grip the club. So explain grip to me. So I said, well, you want a neutral palms opposing grip. And he goes, why? Well, I don't understand. Well, you want them to neutralize and oppose, neutrally oppose itself. He goes, Mike, I don't have any idea what you're talking about. He goes, but let me show you how your joints work. So if you take a hold of a club, and he took my club and I had this grip, and he pulled the club towards him and my arm went like that. And he goes, okay, that's how your joints and you want to line up. So it seems to me like if you wanted to swing a golf club and you had a lot of force and speed coming down, you'd want your joints lined up where when force hits your arms, those joints would square the face. And I went, and so he put me there, and I took a club and I held it and I put it down. I said, well, that's how I used to grip it when I was a kid. He said, why'd you stop? Well, that year I took it, I went out, the first couple of balls I hit hooks and it didn't take me long to just change my hand action from going
Right.
this way to just going this way. And all of a sudden, every ball I was hitting was starting right on line. The only thing I was worried about was trajectory. Well, that year, like I say, I did really well at Shinnecock. I won a bunch of section events. That was my best year when I was fairly close back to what I was as a kid. So that's
Right.
why I started teaching, is I'm going, look, I'm not going to let people go down all the rabbit holes I went down, trying to make themselves in theory better, but the reality, it doesn't fit either who they are as an athlete or how the body is designed to do this stupid game.
Well, and that's what I love about right balance is we have a semblance of order now with an upper core, mid core, low core swing. We have 3 different swing models that most everybody fits into one of them. And grip has to match hip rotation, your pivot has to match. You have all these things that match up, posture. And it's so fun for me when I find out if somebody's upper, mid, or low core that now I know exactly how to coach them and I know what to look at and to get them matched up. And if I tested you and you tested out low core, we'd have had your grip where you had it as a kid. We wouldn't change it because you were low core. Mike, how important do you think it is for teachers to continue to play the game?
Well, I, I think it's extremely important because if you don't play golf, if you don't go out and compete, you have no idea. You forget what it's like to walk out to the first tee, which is a different world than the range,
Right.
and tee up, the wind's blowing, you got water left, out of bounds right, people standing there with you. Now you're going to post a score. Welcome to golf. So unless you go through that, I don't know how you can really empathize and help people be better players. You might be able to help them make a swing that's aesthetically better, but that doesn't mean that's going to work under pressure on the golf course with all the variables that hit you in competition. So when guys say, I don't have time to play anymore, you know, I go, well, I don't shouldn't, I'm hurt, but I still go out and play a few holes.
Right.
You know, I want to keep myself in the game because that's, I think, what we're trying to teach people is how to play golf. I don't think we're trying to teach them to make a swing that they get evaluated on and they get style points and they win a tournament based on the degree of difficulty of the swing type they're doing. That doesn't have anything to do with golf. And
But when you
so
go play, Mike, and you're out there and maybe you're not hitting the ball the way you want to, or you hit a shot that you don't like, and you think about it, and with your knowledge, all of a sudden you say, well, if I did that, I wouldn't overhook this ball. And then you hit a shot and you go, oh, I fixed myself. And the next thing you know, you're on the lesson tee and somebody's doing the same thing. And you're like, hey, I was just playing. I know what to tell this person.
back to Nicklaus. One of the major things Jack said about playing golf is he says you have to learn to adapt. So he says there's many times he'd get on the golf course and he'd be playing along and his ball wasn't going where he wanted it to. And he'd sit there and go, okay, what adjustment can I make? Well, I'm missing it this way. I'm doing this. Well, I'm going to do this on this next shot. Boom. And then he'd have it. Now, my question to him was, how did you learn to make those adjustments? Here's another thing that comes to coaching. We don't have people go out on the range and just make different types of swings. So shorten it up, strengthen your grip, hit it low, hit it high. Make some adjustments. Put the ball back, way back in your stance. Put it way forward. See what it does to your swing. See if it all of a sudden, with what you're doing, helps you with something you struggle with. See, most I do, but 99.9% teachers don't teach that. And Jack's saying you got to learn to know who you are, and then you have to learn to make adjustments on the run, on the golf course when your swing doesn't feel the way you want it to feel. And I
I
asked him
believe
what.
we have this sixth sense that we always know where the target is. And so when we get to the top of our swing, now we're adapting and we got to find a way to square the club face to make the ball go at our target. And sometimes we might not be where we want to be and we've got to adapt to square the face. I've been watching the US Open tennis. Coco Gauff has a new coach working on her serve. And you see her toss the ball up and she's made a few changes. She's closed her stance a little bit. She's trying to throw the ball more in front of her, not out toward the court, but more behind her. But you see that ball up in the air, and I just think she's got to learn how to adapt to where that ball is and use her instincts to figure out how she's going to hit the ball and make it go in the court. That's adapting, isn't it?
No, it's exactly adapting. Since we said tennis, I got to do a tennis thing.
Okay.
So I'm watching the same US Open, right? And Alvarez gets through with his match and he just clocks this guy he's playing. It was like 6'4", 6'2", 6'0", whatever. So he gets through and they're talking to him, they're interviewing him, and he's got his tennis racket with him. And so they said to him, they said, so what are you going to do? You've got time off between your next match. You got the rest of today and all of tomorrow between your next match. And he says, I'm going to go play golf. And now, years ago, that would have been, are you out of your mind? Tennis and golf don't match. And he takes his tennis racket and he says, yeah, golf calms me down and it makes me a better tennis player. Now, I'm gonna get that for sure. And he takes his tennis racket and instead of hitting just a one-handed forehand, he puts two hands on it and he puts two hands on it and he goes, and he makes this just marvelous freaking golf swing. And I'm going, okay. So for all those years when they told us, oh, you can't play baseball and play golf, you can't play
Right.
tennis and play golf, you can't play hockey and play golf, all of those swings are going to ruin you. No, the reality is if you know what you're talking about, all of those sports make the other sports better because it develops hand-eye coordination and perception in different planes of motion. And the reality is you're using, when he's hitting a forehand in tennis, he's doing a lot of the exact same things he's doing when he to hit a golf ball.
Right.
And so that's been my whole career has been around athleticism and sports and how the body works and understanding the individual person and letting them develop their own athleticism into their own swing, which is what you're talking about with what you do. Because this whole industry now that has this set of parameters and numbers about what a swing should be and where your hips should be and how you shallow the club and all this stuff. Yeah, I'm not saying it's bad, but oh my goodness, I went to a couple of these guys and took a lesson, and they put me in positions, and I went, okay. And I just did it for fun. They didn't know who I was. I went to this place that gives a lot of lessons, and I just walked in. I'm Jack Smith. And I made a couple of funny looking swings, because I can do that. I mean, I practiced came right and come over the top, aim left underneath, cross-handed. I mean, I hit it pretty much anyway. So I made a couple of swings that I knew they wouldn't. And so they started showing me what I needed to work on. And I walked out of there thinking, there's no way, there's not a chance in hell I could do what they're just asking me to do.
Right.
At my level of knowing what I know, if I kept going and they kept telling me that, I got no chance of doing it. And I'm pretty good at this game still.
Right. Right.
Okay. So they don't do what you do with mid-core and upper core, lower. They don't do what I do, which is evaluate somebody's athletic motion. They don't play into how somebody moves. They have an idea of what ideal movement is, and they just try to fit everybody into it. And the closer they get to it, supposedly the better players are going to be. That's why when you said earlier, these guys that want to let's go play, we go to these summits and stuff that I go teach at, and I have all these nice teachers there. And I told them, I said, let's have a day where we go play and we have a tournament and you pay a prize for it. And there was like 60 or 70 of the top teachers in the country. Do you know how many guys signed up for the tournament?
8.
2. Me and
Wow.
one other. Now, why don't these guys want to go play a tournament on a good golf course? Because they're going to have to post a score. They probably won't break 90, some of them.
Right. But yet they're teaching golf.
Exactly. And so
Yeah.
I go,
And they get mad when you talk about, well, how good a player do you have to be a good teacher?
well, it's hard to teach somebody how to do something if you've never been pretty good at it.
I agree. I'm sorry, I'm in the camp of Lee Trevino. If you can't beat me, how can you teach me? I mean, if you know 4 chords on a guitar and own a capo, how are you going to teach me how to play jazz? And I found out you play the guitar too. So you know
You're right.
exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, yeah, I mean, for me, it puts me in the student mode. And so then I have to be careful with how I learn and what I do and how I move how fast I learn things. And then how so it keeps me relevant mentally to what it's like to be a student.
Well, it's
And
great that when we give a lesson, it's all you got to interview the person. What sports have you played? What do you do for a living? You ask them a bunch of things. If you had a hip replaced or any health issues or anything I know. And if somebody says, yeah, I was a good baseball player, I was a good tennis player, you go into that. You show them, could you hit it hard with a baseball bat? Yeah, I used to hit it far. Okay, well, let's get some of that speed in your golf swing. Get some of those same things. Like you said, all these people in the old days, they used to say, as you said, don't play these other sports. It'll mess your golf swing up. But the truth is, we can help re-engineer them and make a little few changes in how you play golf based on the other sports that they've played.
now I've seen it. I mean, I do it every day. I did it with my daughter. She was a state champion, all-state softball player until she was a junior in high school. and she was recruited to play softball in college. But golf, she didn't. Then she changed high schools, and the high school she went to, they were the number one softball team, but they had a sixth period that she didn't want to go to. So the only way she could not go to sixth period is she had to be on another team. So they had a golf team. So she comes to me and says, Dad, I want to try out for the golf team. I'm going, okay, good. When's the tryout? Tomorrow. Well, she's only been nine a couple times in her life. Well, but she's really good at softball, so I knew how to take her softball and I knew how to bring it down. And she could kill a driver. So I gave her a driver and a 9-wood and started with a 7-iron. Because with the way we did it initially, the face was so shut and she leaned the shaft so far that she could hit it far, but she couldn't get it in the air. But she goes out and she makes the high school team and ends up doing well in state. And she ends up playing for the University of Arizona. And she only played golf for 2 years. Well, but she had bat speed. And then all I had to do was play into that and adjust her grip a little bit and ball position and hand. And all of a sudden she's hitting her driver. She's got like 100, 103 miles an hour club head speed with a driver. And the golf coaches are going, where the hell has she been? Well, she had bat speed. And I didn't interrupt it. I just added little modifications. And so she comes out, her downside was she hadn't played enough golf to be able to make the adjustments to play against these kids that she was playing against that were basically tour players, +3, 4, 5 handicaps.
Right.
My daughter was shooting 71 to 76. Well, that's good, but it takes a long time to learn how to make those adjustments we were talking about.
Right.
But
right.
if I could have taken her and taught her Hogan swing, right, weakened her grip, open and she'd quit playing. She wouldn't play.
Your website says, don't just play golf, understand it.
Right. Well, I've tried to really simplify golf down so people don't get I can go into all the biomechanics and all of the angles and levers and force vectors and power accumulators and all that stuff. But the reality is you want to understand what you're trying to do, why you're trying to do it, and how a swing works. And I basically do this all the time. I go, okay, here's my golf swing. That's it. That is my swing.
So you're just swinging one-handed with your right hand.
Yeah. Now it's not going like this. It's not. So my wrist works. It's just throw a ball. It's this.
Right.
Got that. And then when I come through and I go on the other side, it goes this way. It doesn't go.
Right.
Okay. So
right.
Here, this is my golf swing.
Right.
Now people they say, well, that's really flippy. No, wait a minute. Or if I could put it in my left hand, there's my golf swing. Now, here's the deal. I'm sitting here doing this, and it looks really flippy at the bottom. Why? Because this isn't moving.
Right. Because you're only doing it with your arm and wrist.
Exactly. So now if all of a sudden my body starts to move to transport this lever system through a bigger arc,
now it doesn't look as flippy.
Now you're watching that. Well, there's no flip.
Right.
Well, but so you kind of have to train parts and pieces and then put them together. And that little drill, understanding that and understanding impact. If you understand those few things and you build your swing on those principles, you're going to get pretty good. If you get into all this other stuff, you might get good maybe if you had 8 hours a day, 6 days a week to stand on the range and pound balls. But like you said earlier, we just want people to get better and have fun with the game.
Right. And what you're doing there, one-handed, I do that all the time on pitch shots, but you're just swinging a club one-handed and letting the club kind of have its free orbit, aren't you? And in doing that, you're training your arms and your hands and your wrist what to do. But now you're not really shifting and rotating your body when you do it. But now you add your body turning and shifting, all of a sudden now you've got even more power in your swing, but you've trained your arms, hands, and wrist what you want them to do. You have a saying on your website, Mike, uncomplicated. What does that encompass?
Well, just like what we did there. I mean, people
Right,
ask all the time, they say, what do you work on in your swing? And I go, and they go, what's that? I said, that's my swing. Because all I'm really doing when I hit a golf ball is this goes like this, and it's doing
right,
that. I get here, my arm externally rotates in my shoulder socket. So now when I get to the top of my swing, the club face is where it's supposed to be. It comes right back to there, and then it goes like this.
right. So if somebody was shooting a free throw, they would, if they didn't move their arm, they're training their wrist action. And then now you add some arm motion to that. And then in a golf swing, now you put in, you let the bigger muscles move to support that. And now you've got a golf swing. But it's so
You,
funny how they teach it the other way. They teach, let's work on your big muscles turning and never tell you what the heck to do with your arms, hands, and wrists.
there was he's a good teacher and he was a mentor. He was a student of mine. He worked underneath me for a long time. He does a lot of stuff now. And he's a really good athlete, great baseball player, and one thing and another. And he's into what you just said. I mean, I'd stand on the range, I'd tell him, I said, look, first of all, never hit a golf ball, never hit a ball farther than the person you can get that you're giving a lesson to can, because you've done nothing but ruin him. And his deal was, now watch this, watch how far I can hit this 7-iron doing this. And I go over and I say, look, when you get through with the lesson, I say, you're not listening. You just ruined that person. So if I've got Maud Frickett who's hitting her 7-iron 90 yards, then when I do a drill and I show her, I hit it 90 yards or maybe 100. I don't hit it 160 because they go, well, I can't do that.
Right.
It's about it's about being able to give people hope. And it's not about when it comes to body, if people don't have control of their hands. I'm going to do a really quick thing here. This is how you learn. This is how your body learns. And people don't study learning. I was lucky to study. When you're a baby and you're sitting in the womb, what's the first thing that develops? Your core. Why? Because you're about to come through that birth canal, and your core has to be strong enough to wrap itself. The paraspinal muscles and all of those muscles have to protect your spinal column from harm as you come out of the birth canal. So now, once you're born, you're laying there. No, you can't move. I mean, the only thing you have access really to is your fingers and your toes. It's called tactile learning. So you're chewing on your fingers and you see you're looking around and you don't see well. It's blurry. But all of a sudden you see a color and you're reaching for it and you go, man, I'd really like to be able to, oh, that's how that works. So all of a sudden, this wants to do something, and this says, I'm going to go help you do it.
Right.
We are trained neurologically to learn from tactile out here, feet and toes in. This reacts to this.
Your big muscles react to your hands and fingers.
Neurologically, that's how you're put together. Now, all of a sudden, you say to this neurological moving person, we're going to tell this to make this work.
Yeah. Yeah, you're going to tell your big muscles, your core to tell your hands what to do.
Exactly. Now, once like you and I mean, I'm good enough with my hands and arms that I can start to add my body into it, but my body gets added in there the right way to accommodate what I'm trying to do with my hands and arms. If you don't know what you want to do with your hands and arms, just adding body motion isn't going to all of a sudden make these things show up.
No, no. That's why you start a beginner with a putter, because you're teaching them how to control the golf club with their arms, hands, and wrists. The body is not shifting and rotating, it's just swinging the putter. And it also is great for a skill that is a huge skill in this game, distance control. So you're always going to start with putting. This lady I had the last couple of days, I said, you want to putt, putt, putt. We hit a 50-foot putt. She hit it about 20 feet, first putt.
Yeah.
So she had no idea. And then I put a ball in her hand and I said, picked a hole about 40 feet away. And I said, okay, I want you to underhand this to that hole. And I said, that's the way you putt. You use your eyes, you feel that target, and then that tells your body what to do. And that tells you how to toss the ball subconsciously. And so you've got to learn that. And I think that's something, it's the least practiced part of this game is distance putting. And that's where you start learning how to control distance. So, Mike, you say there's 4 ways to learn the M system.
Well, the M system is a step by step. Here's what you said. It kind of goes where you just went. So it starts with line of compression and putting. So how do you, when you putt, what are you trying to do? Because your right arm's ability to line up with the club and push the club, line of compression, is key. You can't have your arm up here. You can't. Okay, so learning line of compression and starting with that basic skill with one arm,
Right.
and then as you have that skill, we're going to add another skill to it. We're going to put both hands on it. Now we're going to move this way. And then we're going to go to chipping. And here's how we do chipping. And then we're going. So then as you learn, you're building one skill on top of another. So when I say there's four levels, that's fitness, basically. There's 4 levels of fitness, which there kind of is in learning too. The first level is awareness. So when you're trying to play golf, you've got to be aware of who you are, what you can and can't do, and where you are in the learning curve.
Right.
Okay, the second level is injury prevention. So how can I do this and have fun with it and not get hurt doing it? All right. The third level is conditioning, or that would be when you're full swings and now you're trying to, see if you can hit it a little farther and one thing and another. And the last level is sport specific training, which is shallow the club, do this, do that, where you're trying to add all of those different ideas kinematically and to see if you can do them to have them work. Well, the reality is very few people have the hand-eye coordination and the skill development to start in the highest level.
Right.
The people we're working with should be down in 1 and 2.
Right.
Basic awareness, injury prevention. We're going to get you to move in a manner that fits who you are. You're not going to get hurt doing it.
Well, you
You
have a
know,
lot of fitness in what you do in your teaching. And with what we know now, biomechanically, there are people doing things to their body, and it's amazing how fast the pro player swings the golf club today and the shape that they're in. But we're seeing a lot more injuries now because guys don't have things matched up.
well, yeah. First comes balance. All right. So if you're going to work out, the first thing you're trying to do, and it comes back to awareness and injury prevention, your body is a systemic machine. So it basically works off 90-degree angles. And the first thing you should be trying to do in workouts is establish 90-degree angles and balance so that your body starts to move the way it's supposed to move. So that no joint, tendon, ligament, facet joint has pressure on it it's not designed to handle. Okay, then as you start to build up, you start to build more and more strength, and then you build mobility. So you go balance, then mobility, which is making sure that all the joints and everything, that you have a mobile range of motion, you're not getting in your way, you're not torquing your hips in a manner that creates pressure in that. And then the last part is strength. So I learned this from Agassi. Pete and I have been talking lately too, and I keep talking to him. In the industry now, strength is an interesting word. Just because you can lift more weight, you're doing curls day 1, and day 10 you're doing twice as much. Okay, that means that in this plane of motion with that muscle, you're stronger, but it doesn't mean that systemically you're any stronger. In fact, you might be weaker. So what's
Well, you
happening?
might have gotten stronger, but not faster. And if you're
Exactly.
a golfer, most people want to hit the ball further, which means we got to make the club head go faster.
That
So you
means
can
you have
get,
You got to go balance and mobility first because strength can destroy mobility and balance. So what the industry is doing now is you get these guys and they're trying to create speed and force and they use vertical forces and all this stuff. And I get it. Say, well, we're going to get you as strong as we can in this pattern so you can create maximum force with the golf club. Now, my question to that is, okay, well, when you do that, I'm pretty good at drawing what they call force vectors. So if you do that, then there's going to be a force that's going to go on this line and it's going to hit this part of the body that is not designed to handle that force. What are you going to do about it? You okay with that? Well, we're going to get that area stronger so it can handle that force. I go, okay, time out. I got another question. So now you're going to strengthen an area stronger than it's designed to be to handle a force it's not designed to handle. That's called imbalance. So long term, doing what you're doing, you're setting these guys up for injuries. And this whole desire for speed and the way they do it, a lot of it is not the way the body's designed to do it. And it's compensating and compromising joints where it's not a matter of if they're going to get hurt, it's when. And then
Right.
the physical therapy guys run in there and the trainers run in there and try to work them back and take off a couple of weeks and get them back to semi and go at it again. See, that drives me crazy because honestly, Larry, doing it the way the body's designed to do it, you would probably have almost as much, if not as much speed. You'd be more efficient and you wouldn't get hurt doing it.
Yeah, and that's one thing that's really cool about right balance is whether you're upper, mid, or low core, there's more than one way to create speed. And if you're trying to create speed the wrong way, and a big thing people think now is let's rotate as fast as we can through the ball. Well, we know the long drive hitters, the body rotation slows down. It's
Yeah.
peaked probably when the shaft is parallel to the ground coming into the ball. From there
Yeah.
to the ball, they call them stops. The long drive guys, it's like they hit a stop sign. We got to slow the car down so the club head can go flying by.
Yeah.
And yet somebody's here trying to gyrate their hips through the ball, which can hurt your lower back. And, I've had people trying to rotate their hips and clear, and their back hurts and their upper core. And I say, look, you just shift and rotate into a vertical. You don't have to clear. And all of a sudden, hey, my back doesn't hurt now.
Well, you're right back to blending emotion into the design of a human body. And it's a catapult thing. At some point in time, you can't just these people that say get up to the top of the swing and then just unwind as hard as you can. I go, I mean, I had a big dissertation. I saw a little demonstration here for people. So they said that they stand here like this. They said, well, see, when you stand here, no matter how hard I swing, when I swing, the club stays at a 90-degree angle to me. That's physics. I go, I got it. So I say, all you have to do basically when you hit a ball is just go down here and just unwind as fast as you can. And the club is going to catch up. It's going to go in the right arc. I said, whoa, time out. Right arc. Here you're standing at a 90-degree angle. So the club's swinging like this around you. But when you go here, the club wants to swing in this arc, which
Right.
would miss the ball by a foot and a half. So if I go back here and I just unwind, I'm going to miss the ball by a foot and a half. So if I'm going to do that, what is going to all of a sudden make this club change its arc and get into the correct arc to run into the ball? If you tell me it's your core, I'm leaving the room because your hands at that high level have to feel where the momentum is. And if you're going to do that, your hands have to direct the momentum of the club to the ball. You can't just stand there, turn your hands off, and just unwind and think you're going to hit it. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I worked with a lot of different teachers, and we worked on rotating, and we didn't really talk about our hands. And I did a video several years ago saying I'm never ever again going to take my hands out of my release. I'm going to have my hands in my release every time. I'm not going to do that. And I remember I took this one lesson and I was coming down into the ball And I asked the teacher, I said, so what square is the club face? And he grabbed my shoulder and he grabbed my hip and rotated me into the ball. And I didn't do anything with my arms, hands, and wrists. And I think a bunch of teachers were probably perplexed when they watched me stripe the ball on their range. And then when I went and played in the tour events, I'd block it to Kingdom Come and I'd miss the cut. And they probably think, ah, Rinker's just a choker. He's out there, he was hitting it great on the range with me. Well, the problem is like you say, I wasn't telling my hands what to do. And so
Exactly.
I've just made that decision. My hands are always going to know what they want to do in the hitting area and how I square that club to the back of the ball. I think that's probably the most important thing that we need to do when we play this game.
Nicholas, feel these fingers.
Nicholas, I feel it in my fingers. I feel it in my toes. The love
Good
is all around me. And so the feeling grows. I sang that in my band in sixth grade called the Realms of Paradise.
yeah.
So, yeah, you got to feel it in your fingers. Well, Mike, it's been great having you back on the show. People can find you at malaskagolf.com. And so great to catch up with you. I always enjoy our conversations. And been great having you, buddy.
Larry, we got to keep fighting the fight. This new thing that's out there, I jumped into it in the 80s. I got involved in the biomechanics and all the muscle firing patterns. And honestly, as much as I understood it, as hard as I worked on it on myself, most of those people, I should send them their money back. Even though the information might have been right, correct to some degree, didn't make them better players. And that's what this is about. This game should be fairly easy for people to hit the ball in the center of the face, get it in front of them, and go out and have fun playing the game. And that's what we're here for.
Right. No, that's really our purpose. Well, Mike, great having you, my friend. Till next time, keep swinging.